Hi to everybody and their neighbor. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Gear and Gigs, the podcast. I'm your host, Jet Stone, once again, with my cohort in crime, Trey Hawkins. Trey, how are you?
Good.
Good, glad to hear it. And as a special guest today, we have Joie Calio from Seven Horse and formerly from Dada, of course. Joey, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Glad to hear it. Now, Trey and I are coming to you from Dallas, and Joey, where are you coming from?
Seattle.
Beautiful
day in Seattle.
It is two big music towns connected via the wonders of Zoom.
Yes.
So if you hear artifacts in our audio, it's not our poor recording methods, it's Zoom. We blame Zoom. Just right up. Let's get that out front. We love you, Zoom, but we're going to blame you, man.
Yeah.
And if we get photobombed by somebody naked, that's probably Zoom. I'm just saying. Not sure, but I'm scared that you look behind you, Trey. I'm really worried.
Me too.
So we had Joey on recently to talk about Seven Horse and all the amazing things they've been doing and all the places they've gone. And we had his cohort in crime, Phil Levitt, on there. But we wanted to talk a little bit more about guitar, because we're guitar geeks, right? We're guitar nerds. And so we wanted to talk about guitar and bass and amps and pedals and that kind of fun stuff. And so this is our chance to do that. We're going to try to keep it to a little shorter than our last time. We're gonna give Joey back his evening here in less than an hour is our goal. So the first question I had for you is you right before we started the show, you were talking a little bit about your search for like a drive pedal to put on your board that's relatively bulletproof. I mean, your goal here is to make the live board that's bulletproof you can take around with you, and you're looking through different flavors of drive pedal. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been looking at and what you think?
Well, what I got right now, let's start with that. The first pedal that's almost always on is one of those EP boosts.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, I think it's EP booster to be completely technical, but that just seems to work really well with all my gear. And the funny thing is with all this kind of stuff, it can sound great at home. It can even sound great in the studio. But once you go and start rehearsing or playing live and run it through bigger amps and stuff at higher volume, it's stuff that was great at home or great in the studio. It either doesn't have the same flavor all of a sudden at high volume, or it doesn't stack well at high volume. And it's like, what happened? And
it's always different.
Right? So it took me a while to kind of figure out. It's like, I think where I'm at now is I like to stack kind of clean boosts or clean drives together. And then, and I think what do I got? I got the EP going into a Shins clean boost. Are you hip to Shins?
I am, now that you told me about them the other day. So I started looking those up. Yeah.
That's
not cheap, but they sound awesome.
No, it's some pretty sexy stuff. Really cool stuff. So the EP and the clean drive, those go perfectly together. So far, so good. The next level is where it starts getting a little tricky. I was looking for maybe a different thing to either blend with the EP or to put the Shins in something else before I went to the next level, which was overdrive. It can stand alone. It's its own overdrive flavor. So that's
when you say stand alone, does that mean you would turn off the other stuff?
Yes, you can run it by itself if you want, or maybe just EP and overdrive. I do that a lot. I mean, if I just leave the EP, the cool thing about that EP drive, well, I guess it's the same thing with the Shins too, is it's real simple to turn. EP is even simpler. It's one knob. It sounds good on all the way. It's not really off, but what is that, 7 o'clock or whatever?
Yeah, there is no actual off. It's always got a little bit of a boost. Yeah,
exactly. So it sounds good just like that. For kind of cleaner tones and stuff like that. Halfway, at 12, it's awesome. And above 12, it just gets awesomer, But
right.
I was having troubles with with pedals that sounded really good in the studio. And when I attached them to that EP through either the Gretsch or a Tele or whatever, those are kind of a couple of my main guitars. It just got too growly, too not quite metal, but going in that direction,
Right.
just
Yeah.
got too out of control. Just not, it didn't sound like my guitar anymore, or my amp. So that's kind of a lesson learned for me, go slow in your increments. Don't try to, go from A to B in a big jump. So I'm looking for that third slot, the third clean boost. And I had one that was working well, but it ended up having a little bit of an electronical issue. And at this point, I just need complete peace of mind.
I get that.
I had a really bad night, personal bad night. Band was great, but I had a personal bad night at the last show we played before the lockdown, which was at the Troubadour in LA. And now, by the way, I hear the Troubadour's
going. Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. Long story short, and now here I go. There was a short in the pedal board. Could not figure it out. I mean, had guys running around. Finally, it was just like plugged straight into the amps. And thank God I was running, I had my big amps that night, which was nice. But just unsatisfying. And I really realized it's like, man, I'm just being too cute with my pedal board. Like too many like little wire. It's like, oh, it's okay. Everything's fine. But it's really not. It needs to be able to be stepped on. A guy needs to be able to pick it up and knock it sideways, and when you're not looking, it's like it's stuff that happens when you're not looking, right? Because I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Look what happens when you're not looking. Now that's an album title right there, dude.
Exactly. So that's it. I need peace of mind, and I'm going to keep the other pedal, which will remain unnamed because I really like it, and I don't want to put any kind of stink on it right now. It's a great pedal. Pedal X. But I have a lot of pedals. I feel like I have a batch of studio pedals and a batch of live pedals. And the live can be in the studio, but the studio doesn't play as well live. So,
it's interesting. Because I do so much recording, of course, I always think about the studio versus live, because a lot of the stuff that we take from here and we go out and perform. And the thing that I've noticed over the years is an effect that I call residual sound. You're sitting in front of your amp, you're listening to it. It sounds great. It sounds full. It sounds rich. And then as soon as you add anything to it, a drum set, a keyboard, a bass, especially a bass, but even vocals or a bassoon or a violin, it doesn't matter. As soon as you add anything to it, what you hear on the guitar has now changed, and what you hear is the remaining frequencies that are not masked by the other thing, of course, and it's the residual frequencies that are left over that you're hearing. And so I try not to judge a guitar or an amp or effect on anything but residual sound if I can help it, unless it's only going to be used by itself, because otherwise you're always disappointed. We used to have kids when I'd work in the music store when Metallica was much bigger than they are and everybody wanted to sound like that. They'd come into the store and dial up the sound of the entire band of Metallica out of the guitar amp, right? So they got the bass cranked and it's going thump, 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 and it sounds like the band Metallica, but not what the guitar in Metallica actually sounded like, which was just kept in those guitar frequencies. And then they added the bass and the drums and it got that sound. And I think we started to see a lot of people start to try to make the whole sound out of their amp. And then that just creates more masking frequencies for the other stuff. And you know what I mean? So I think if we're conscious of residual sound and what we're trying to get across and everybody stays in their bandwidth, the overall result can be much more pleasant and easier to deal with in that regard.
I mean, that reminds me of kind of what I have found. I mean, just as far as people, how they hear music versus how a musician who has experience hears music. And it's essentially, I'm holding my fist up. This is how people hear music, like a balled up fist. It's one thing. This is how musicians who have experienced hear music. They hear all the little details. It's all separated. And I don't think, once musicians get there, I'm not sure if all musicians understand, people don't hear music like that. It's just one thing washing over them, you know? So you're right. If a kid thinks that, you know, Metallica is that is this sound, then they're trying to get it all. I mean, I wonder what pedal were they trying to use to sound like Metallica back in the day?
Oh,
Well, I mean, like, it's just like working in a guitar store, like having to have that conversation with, look, man, if you're playing by yourself and then want to take that by yourself guitar tone and play with a band, it's not going to sound that great because it's not going to be satisfying. Because again, you're used to listening to the record, you're hearing everything, all
Right.
the compression, quad tracking, like all of this different stuff. I mean, you know, if you, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, but if you do it enough and you play live enough, you just kind of develop an ear and appreciation for that ugliness in and of itself. So that when you're listening to something, just you go, oh man, this is going to really vibe with the rest of the band. And you just kind of end up liking it. I mean, that's what I've found for myself is the guitar tone that I like now after having played in bands for 10 years is not the guitar tone that I liked when I first picked up and started playing guitar, or even 4 or 5 years into it, having known a little more and been playing for a while. It's totally different now because I just inherently have this ear for the mix and
what's
what's
going to
going to
cut
happen
through and
with everything else.
Yeah.
And that's a cool kind of thing that I feel like musicians kind of get a secret window to.
This sort of reminds me also of getting to a point where I'm done with trying to recreate the record live. I mean, I'm just close is close enough.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help you to try to nail all these, like, is the delay exactly like it is on that song? Just that's not really what people are judging you by. They're judging you by what you're putting out there, you know, your
Right.
energy, you know, you're not getting blown away by a guy who's nailing the part exactly how it is live. You get blown away by a guy who's who's letting go and just being raw and, you know, putting himself in kind of harm's way in a way. Like, I'm just going to, you know, I might make a mistake right now because I'm letting go. And I'm just, that's the thing that's exciting to people. That's the thing I think that's the big connection, you know.
I agree.
That's what
Right.
people feel, you know.
I mean, I can only think of one example of all the concerts I've ever seen. And as someone who loves or I guess used to love the note for note album recreation in a live setting, I used to be a stickler for, okay, if that's the fill that you played on the record, that's the fill we got to play live. And I was stupid, but you know, it is what it is. And I can only think of one example where I listened to a band live and went, oh my gosh, they got it perfect. And it was a fleeting moment, like before they even started the song, of, wow, I know what song they're about to go into because I can feel it. It's a tangible thing of their perfection of getting that. And that was once in 2008, and I don't care. There's been so many concerts that were so much better than that.
Right.
That didn't, that stuck with me, but only because it only happened once. If it happened 2 or 3 times, whatever. That was cool, I guess. But I don't remember anything about that concert past before they started that song that I knew. I knew that they had gotten it like just damn near perfect.
And here's the thing.
I mean, I feel like a lot of bands that are doing that nowadays are playing to tracks too. I mean, that's the other thing, you know.
It seems like if somebody comes out and plays it, and I used to be the same way. I really wanted to play the album exactly like the album, and I used to make my band do that. Once again, I feel foolish now because, as you said, Joy, that nobody cares for the most part. But also, it's almost like if you play it that way, that's the only way you know it, and you don't own the song. It's not in you. You're just recreating it like a cover band, as opposed to, no, that we own this song and we can play it any way we want to, and I can stretch and I can pull on this thing because it's got such a solid life of its own, And so in some ways you kind of want to hear somebody do something a little different, maybe have a slightly different sound, because it shows they've thought about it. It shows that they've evolved maybe with the song since they did it, and they're not stagnant. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Well, if you take the emotional aspect out of the musical performance, it's not the same thing. That's a different thing. You know, that you can't imagine the song "Gimme Shelter," you know, and I wish I knew the woman's name. She's featured in that documentary, 10 Feet from the Star, or whatever it's called. I can't remember the name of it. It was all about the background singers, the great background singers. Yeah. Anyways, the woman who came in and sang, you know, just off the cuff, "Gimme Shelter," it's the greatest moment for me of a female, you know, emoting on a rock record.
It's almost like a Great Gig in the Sky, right? That same kind of thing.
That's the other one.
Yeah,
I'd say both of those the same one, but this one is almost more raw because I love it, especially when you find out in the movie she doesn't really care about the Rolling Stones. She doesn't, you know, give a damn about them or Mick Jagger. And she was kind of like, you know, her hair's up in curlers when she gets there and like, okay, you're a big shot, Mick Jagger. Let me show you how it's done. And she kind of did.
Oh yeah.
You know, you can hear them freaking out. You can hear them in the background, you know, go woo and all that stuff because she's just emoting. You know, and it'll never be that way again. Even if she went on tour with them, it's not going to be exactly like that. You know,
right? Yeah.
That's
and like even as you know, because my band has to play to tracks because we wrote everything for 2 guitars and we lost a guitar player. Right. So you're
going to find that guy. I'm telling you, he's going to show up one of these days.
You can't have the job no matter how many times you ask.
he's right here.
Yeah. But like, so even though we played it, have like auxiliary instruments and things like strings and stuff in the background, or even sometimes other like dual rhythm parts when I'm playing, I still intentionally don't play it the exact same way.
Right.
Like I have fun on stage. I love being on stage. I love playing the songs that we've written. And so I want that to translate. And there's a certain sterility to just playing the tracks and playing everything, you know, note for note, that because I know certain parts of our set are, you know, have to be locked in like that. When I know that I have wiggle room, I take the wiggle room. And my bass player will look over and go like, "Oh my gosh, please stop." but it's fun. And like, I've never had anybody come up to me and go, "Man, you were having way too much fun," and have it be a bad thing.
Or hey, that didn't sound like the album.
Right. Yeah. I've never had anybody go, "Yeah, that didn't sound like the track. It was, dude, that squeal that you did there was super cool." I'm like, "Yeah, I know my bass player hates it."
One of the things we've talked about on previous podcasts, and it's kind of ironic considering the name of our show, but if you ask a listener, you know, going back to your fist listener concept, right? Right. That came out all wrong. I'm so sorry. If you go back to the listener, as somebody who doesn't really give a damn about any of this detail stuff, and you ask them, what kind of guitar was that on that song that you liked? They won't know. They couldn't tell you if it's a humbucker, a single coil, a Gibson, a Fender, a Gretsch. They don't know. Just like if you hear a saxophone play on a song, I'm guessing, you probably don't know what kind of saxophone that was or care what kind of metal it was made out of. When you hear a piano even, and we're all familiar with pianos. I mean, we've all played with keyboard players. I'm a keyboard player. If I'm picking out my synthesizer or my sample, I'm going to be very persnickety about what piano sample I pick. The audience could care less, and I could care less. If I'm listening to Billy Joel, I don't know what kind of piano that guy's playing, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me if he's playing electric, if it's a sample, if it's a real piano. I have no standards about that, and it's like, well, I trust him since he's making the song that I like to pick out a sound that's good and play it on something that's appropriate. And, you know, I mean, yeah, if he came out with a really, really inexpensive piano on stage that we all knew was an off-brand, I'd be like, ooh, times are hard there. But by the same token, if he played the hell out of it, I wouldn't care at the end, and I wouldn't remember that part of it, you know? So I think as musicians, we need to focus more on not on the gear. There's a double negative, but on the gear that inspires us to get that emotion that Joey's talking about, where we can let loose and we can, as I say, let it flow through you. let it come from wherever the music thing comes from and flow out uninhibited. And whatever that is that makes it easiest to flow out is the things we should go for. And if it takes a special pedal to give you that sound, so you go, oh, that's the sound that's in my head, and that will allow the flow to happen, then it's still legitimate to talk about the details. But I think we should keep in mind the audience's caring level is much different than our own, and their standards are almost non-existent. I mean, really,
it's good or it's not.
And there's
really what it comes down to.
Somebody
it's
come out with a
fail.
bad guitar tone, and you won't care if the song is good.
Mm-hmm.
It is a show, after all. I mean, that's what it's a show. People are coming to see something that you can't normally see in your day-to-day life. And what you can't normally see are people letting go and putting it out there and willing to be crazy. It's funny because I think the more you do it too, as a musician, the better you get at letting go. I mean, once you've kind of tapped into that, like it's okay to kind of let go. And actually that's where it's at. For me now, it's like, we have this song Methlab Zoso Sticker. Every once in a while I'll hear the recording of it, and the recording's good, but I'll go, oh my God, that is not what I sound like live. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to get that sound at all live,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, I mean, think about Cheap Trick. What was it? I Want You to Want Me, right? The live version, spectacular. The recorded version, you're like, oh my God, that's not even the same song.
Right.
Or the Kiss albums, getting famous from the live versions.
That's a good point.
Or playing too. What was the disco song? I Was Made for Loving You. It's completely different live.
Yeah.
Than it was on the record.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's cool.
It is cool.
Love affair with the Counting Crows, which is unusual if you know my standard issue music taste. But they almost never play the songs the same way live that they do on the record, and they do it intentionally. Adam, their singer, kind of acts like a director in the moment of, okay, this is where we're going with this song. Everybody needs to be on par and follow me. And like to your credit, Joey, like that level of musicianship and being willing to let go and go, cool, we're going this way with the song tonight. Right. Whatever, like we can do that. That's become so much cooler to me as I've gotten older and played more.
Speaking of Counting Crows, they used to be on Geffen, and I worked at Geffen before I got signed in the band Dada, and so I get to go to all these Geffen shows, and I saw them, and I will say this is an unusual situation. They had the loudest, by far, pre-roll of any band. I'm not the band, but they played Magical Mystery Tour, Roll Up, It was, I couldn't believe how loud it was. And, I can dig something being loud, but it was moving, molecules around the room. It was shocking. I mean, Kiss, speaking of Kiss was a pretty loud band. I saw Kiss, it was a while ago. Because Kiss was more like a kitschy thing for me. It was never like that's my band kind of thing. But it did kind of like become a fun thing to like. And
it's a show. I mean, it's a show.
Totally. And I think I did get into them because of the live stuff. I think, or maybe it was that and that double platinum record was kind of a fun. It was just, the pop kind of hits of Kiss kind of stuff. Right. But that was a loud band. But as far as like loud stuff, no one's ever topped the Counting Crows.
Wow, I would never think of them as a loud band.
I wouldn't have ever thought that.
Wow.
Oh, it was mind blowing.
Wow. So going back to the gear for a minute, because I've been thinking about this. I'm doing a similar thing like you are because we've seen each other's boards. I'm looking at a stage of gain that's very light and that colors it, then another stage that really is more of an EQ color, even though it's just a clean boost. It kind of gives it a certain, I don't know, a fluffiness to it or whatever, and a roundness and maybe a little bit of bottom end. And then I'm going through another one for my overdrive. And then for solos, I've got this other one. And then I'm going into a clean amp. I'm going into the Two Rock and the Boogie in stereo. And I'm just setting those really clean. either one could do a great distortion, but I find it easier to control for pedals and that kind of thing. But I started thinking, really what we're doing on the floor is creating cascading gain stages exactly like they're doing in the boogies and the, the higher end amps and stuff, where you've got all these amps. But the difference is that we can control each one with our foot on the fly. And I think that's the interesting thing. And I hadn't really put that all together in my head. It kind of just happened. I'm looking over here at my pedal board. It just kind of happened organically that I developed it that way. And it was when you started telling me how you did yours, I'm like, oh, that's what we're doing. How about that? We've what do they call that? Deconstructed the amp and put it on the floor.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, it's better. I have found to get that that slight incremental movement, because it really at volume it's not so incremental.
Right.
It really does have a you really can, and plus it's like how it is. It's like you're playing a telly with just regular telly pickups, even if they're great telly pickups. Okay. But then you go and get some P90s, or you play a Gretsch with some, Filtertrons, and it's like, whoa, what just happened? And forget, I don't even have, do I have I don't have a straight humbucker pickup on any guitar right now, which
Wow.
not because I don't want one. I just don't have it right now. I think I lean more towards the cleaner kind of sound, except in the studio. I'm always like, give me that SG or whatever. But that it's amazing how different those pedals sound through the different guitars. It's not like you get your pedal and it sounds the same with all your, that's the other thing. That's another reason for having more than one or a couple of different clean boosts, because one's going to play better with that humbucker.
That is true. I can turn off my EP, for instance, which gives you that bottom end hump and that extra little boost. I turn that off if I'm going to grab something with a humbucker. And then I probably don't need as much of my solo boost. So I won't use that for solos, I could just drive up the guitar volume a little bit for a solo. But with the single coils, which is what I usually would play, I need all of them.
Right.
Are you riding your volume? You guys ride your volume when you play with your hand on the guitar?
I do.
I am wide open all the time.
Now, you're still talking about your volume, right?
Me too.
Everything. All of it wide open. No,
I mean,
honestly. Do what?
Do you use a volume pedal at all?
I don't.
I do have a volume pedal, but it's literally just for at the end of the song to turn off my signal. Like, it's not. I don't ever use it as a tone shaping kind of thing.
I always find they screw up your sound somehow. They take away the impact or something.
Yeah, well, and because I've got mine running through my Kemper, it's set as an expression in volume within the circuit, so it's not the signal going into the amp. It's within the amp itself that it's backing off of things.
Right.
But I mean, there is I don't know. I've kind of fallen in love with this idea of bypassing a tone stack or bypassing a volume.
The grease bucket circuit, right?
Within the guitar. Yeah, like this raw, just what the pickup gives you is what you have. And I don't know if it's just from being around it and just kind of developing an appreciation for it, but that has really just kind of been what I've fallen in love with. I mean, my buddy literally took out his volume and tone pot in his Jazzmaster about a month ago and played it for me, and it sounded like like a whole new guitar.
Huh.
And
I totally want to do that.
Yeah, like there's something so cool about like a blower switch or okay, cool, we're just gonna go, balls to the wall, just pure tone of the pickup into the front of the amp with maybe one or two things. And I think that's kind of what some of the pedals are doing, is making up for the fact that we have created resistance or taken away from the signal that's leaving the guitar. If you're using something like I know Jet uses a steel string,
so to see,
and you've used them before. Like, that pedal to me has that kind of bypassing the tone stack sound, even though we didn't bypass the tone stack within the guitar or the amp, necessarily, but that kind of raw feeling. I feel like we're using pedals to kind of give back some of the life to what we've taken away by having all the switching and all the different resistance and things within the guitar.
No, that's
not to get
interesting.
too nerdy about it.
No, that's interesting though. I hadn't really thought about the pedals as a making up so much as a control after the fact. Interesting. I would feel lost without volume on my guitar. I don't know what I would do without it.
So that's what I use a volume pedal to ride. I use it for dynamics, essentially, just the same way you're probably using it. For me, it's like special. I think, I didn't really become I'm not a great guitar player. I'm an okay guitar player, but I got much better about 15 years ago. I learned how to play slide. I learned how to finger pick, blah, blah, blah. But in this band, 7-Horse, I became a much better. So that's been 10 years now. And basically it's because there was no bass player and no other, it was just me and Phil live. And so I'm doing everything. Anything that's not drums, I'm doing. So it's like if I stop, the music stops. So don't stop. A lot of open string, droning, a lot of open tuning and stuff like that. It kind of created a style for me, which is kind of cool because now I don't play like anybody else or like most other people. But the one thing I don't have is time to play with knobs on the guitar. I'm just, there's a lot of strumming going on,
Well, yeah, you're used to being the whole thing and filling out all the space.
So you're used to doing everything.
You can't
stop.
Right. So I got used to using a volume pedal. I really like that. That's I just, I roll it back a little and then full blown. And then of course it's great as a kill switch, like you were saying. I mean, that's always awesome. But I mean, I don't do like, I'm not Steve Howing it or anything like that. I'm not doing that stuff.
Right.
I'm not, that's not
I've never heard Steve Howe as a verb before.
Yeah,
that was
Steve Howing it.
Steve Howing it. Interesting. I've tried pedals before and I don't find that I think it's probably because I'm a drummer. So I don't find my gross motor skills in my feet sensitive enough to do what I want to do. I always end up either overshooting my mark or undershooting it and then listening back later and going, oh man, me and my damn pedal. So I know I can do it with my fingers. My feet, not so sensitive. They're just used to banging on stuff.
Right.
Well, I feel like a lot of volume pedals too that I've tried over the years have this kind of here I am, like kind of feel to it, and so if it's not calibrated right or if it's not the right kind of pot value or something like that really hinders the ability to use that as a finesse tool. And so I feel like a lot of us just kind of develop habits and preferences based on what our limitations are.
Now I'd just like to say that he lives in Seattle, so pot value may mean something different to him. Throwing that out there.
Oh, yeah.
Because in Texas, it's just a potentiometer.
Every street corner around here. It's crazy. Because you're right about that with the volume pedal. And you got to, I mean, this is not a inexpensive game we're playing here. I mean, although if you work at a music store, that might make it easier because you get to try stuff out. But I just recently got are you guys hip to Free the Tone?
Oh yeah,
yes. Love Free the Tone.
The delay in the chorus.
I just got their volume pedal.
Oh.
It's totally different the way they've got it set up. I mean, I was using those the VP Juniors, and I don't want to diss them because they do fit perfectly and they kind of work perfectly. But man, I've gone through so many of those strings live. I mean, they just don't hold up on the road. I mean, you know what it comes down to. What will hold up on the road? Well, this Free the Tone thing, it's got a instead of a string, it's like it's like a gear. It's like almost like a toothed, I don't know. It's
kind of washer thing.
Go ahead.
What were you saying, Trey?
Like a washer with teeth, like kind of a rubber.
It's not a washer. It's a long cable. It's like a zip tie in a way,
Okay, got it.
but it's beefy. And it runs the entire length of it. It's really cool. Although I haven't toured with it yet. And the funny thing is, like, I am jonesing. I think I mentioned this before. I don't know what is going on, man. A bug bit me a couple weeks ago, and now I can't stop thinking about 2-rock amps. I'm so locked in.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. I've got a Bogner Shiva 20th anniversary with KT88s. That is such a beautiful amp.
Great
I've got a Matchless Clubman. Again, very warm, super cool amp. And then I've got little versions of both of those. I've got I run those with 2x12s. I got a 1x12 Matchless Avalon that's got a 30-15, half the tube, power tube section thing. It's really good. Actually, that thing sounds good in the studio. I'm very surprised at how good that sounds in the studio. And then I've got another Bogner with EL34s, so it's just for smaller footprint. But it's so I'm not hurting for amps.
Right.
But I mean, if you look at my YouTube thing, it's just, it's all, shootouts of different 2-rock things right now.
Right.
So, and here's the other funny thing. If I had a 2-rock right now and I wanted to go play live, good luck.
Well, there is that.
Which and like as a 2-rock dealer, I literally just sold a Bloomfield Drive right before I headed over here to do the podcast, and
that hurts him, man. That's what he wants.
We can't keep them in stock. Like, this guy literally goes, will you do a deal on it? I'm like, no, man. Like, it is what it is, because they're 38 to 42 week lead time.
Wow.
For a new order. And it's because they want to be the ones touching every single amp. Right. They refuse to drop the quality for sake of production, which is what makes them great. Because they have some kind of special sauce in them that I haven't heard in pretty much any other amp. And, honestly, that's the only thing that could probably knock me off of Kemper, is if 2-rock went, hey, if you burn your Kemper in front of us, we'll send you a TS1. I'm like, all right, man, I got the matches right here. I'm ready. Let's do this. But
don't do that.
No, I'm not going to.
What do you? Since I got you here, what are your feelings between the Silver Sterling versus the Bloomfield?
So the Bloomfield, from what I've experienced, is definitely more that kind of mid-gain flavor. If you're always kind of riding in between the lines and you want to push it a little more, you can. The TS1 is very, very, very clean to very, very, very driven. And I like the TS1 probably the best for my applications. Right. But the Bloomfield Drive is a very, very, very close runner-up. Because the Sterling Silver and the Reverb Signature tend to be a little more clean than I like in general. And if I'm running a 2-rock, I pretty much want to run the gain stages within the amp, because they do it so well that putting a pedal in front of it sometimes doesn't acclimate quite as well. The studio definitely takes pedals better than the TS1 and the Bloomfield. Each one has like a different rectifier in it. Like even the Bloomfield Drive, the 50 watt versus the 100 watt has a solid state rectifier in it, so your bass is a little more compressed and you have broader headroom. And the 50 watt has a tube rectifier in it, so it's a little squishier, a little warmer in general with its attack. And they kind of do that to balance everything out, because at 50 watts you don't have the headroom that you do at 100 watts.
Well, so that was going to be my next question. Can you get away with a 50 watt? I mean, it's like, I really want the 100 watt. But look, man, I'm already getting yelled at, from
my 35 is so loud, man. My 35 is ridiculously loud. I've never heard anything, even like a Vox AC30. It would be blown out by this thing, and that's the 35. And I use that in the boogie and stereo. It's so much.
I like the headroom. I love. That's what I like about the Bogner. Tons of headroom.
Well, and when you consider that the relationship between wattage and volume is logarithmic, not direct. So
Right.
going from 50 to 100 watts is only really giving you an additional 3 dB
That's
of
what
volume.
it says, right?
It's really just about the headroom and the tone. It's not about from 50 watts up, it's really your flavor. It's not the power. I mean, I've seen bands do just fine with 50 watts, and you couldn't have fooled me, or you could have fooled me, excuse me, that they were running 100-watt heads out of 412s, and I would have been like, oh yeah, of course they are. And they're just 50 watts. It's just how it saturates, how it compresses naturally, and the general kind of flavor within the amp. So, I mean, it depends on what your focus is. I typically tell people that are asking, in terms of.
So when I get my 100-watt 2-rock and they yell at me, I'm going right. Well, Trey said,
Yeah, you can give them my phone number, and I'll be like, look, man, you're the sound guy, so it's automatically your fault.
Wow, there's a T-shirt idea right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're focusing on clean and you're wanting to push it more with pedals here and there, the 100 watts probably the better, at least on paper, probably the better option. If you're wanting to run everything within the amp and using pedals sparingly with it, then the 50 watt might be better.
I'll tell you, the headroom on this 35, I've never, even at the loudest I can stand it, it never feels like it's choking or running out of headroom. I mean, I had a Mark V Boogie 90 watter not too long ago, and clean. It sounded like it had infinite headroom, and I swear this thing could keep up with it. It just keeps getting better and better sounding the closer you get to the end, but I've never gotten there.
Right.
The Clubman I have, I love it, but it does start to break up. I mean, it's just got that EL34 thing.
Right.
And that sounds cool, but so I tend to run it quieter than the Bogner, and then kind of just control them that way.
Well, because the Bogner Bogner's not 100 watts, is it?
It's 90, but it's
9. Okay.
It's they say but it's KT88s. I mean, that thing is just
which is massive
beef.
Yeah.
So rich.
Which I think I told you last time, the Shiva's one of my favorites, and that one still, like, if I got, again, gun to my head, had to choose between a Shiva and a 2-rock like a TS1, I don't know if I could let the 2-rock go.
Just 2-rock do artist deals? That's my next question.
They do. One of the guys that comes to our shop a lot has serial number 001 of the TS1s.
Nice.
And he's an endorser of theirs. So the worst they can say is no, like you said last time.
What's so funny? I would never used to even think of that kind of stuff. And one day Phil goes, well, why don't you call whoever it was and see if you can get a deal? And I did, and I got one. And it was the very beginning. It was before we were, anything. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to keep going. And then we got in the Wolf of Wall Street movie, and boom, I got right. I've been, it's been very helpful. Let's put it that way. But no one's giving you stuff. They're just giving you a great deal on it, basically.
Right. And they're such a small company that, if the wait time for the average person is 42 weeks, you're not going to get a ton of special treatment because they're going to take just as long to make yours perfectly as they will the Joe Schmo that buys it from a dealer or direct or anything like that. But it's I love being involved with a company that I believe in, and like I have a couple of endorsement things that I partner with and stuff like that, and it's a communal kind of feeling, and especially if it's gear that you love, you are going to buy it anyway.
Right.
But you can, wear it with pride and be like, yeah, man, I play 2-rocks because they're the best.
Right.
That's a cool kind of thing. And thinking about it, Jet Ariel Posen's a 2-rock artist. Schofield might be.
Eric Johnson.
Eric Johnson. So yeah, they definitely have an artist program. So I would hit them up.
Right.
And
as soon as I see that, I'm looking at your shirt, Jet. I need to make it really clear. Gretsch actually did give me a white Falcon, so that was very nice of them.
Yeah, love Gretsch. Big Gretsch fan.
I've got a white Falcon and a silver Falcon, and man, You just can't beat. I love them, and they're the made in Japan. They're
Yeah.
awesome. Have you guys ever seen Setzer play live?
I have.
Mm-mm.
It is one of the best experiences of my life.
Oh,
That guy,
I was knew he was good, but forget about it, man. He is
he's
just incredible.
he's all that feel, and he just gets it. And he doesn't play it exactly like the record, and you wouldn't want him to, but man, can that guy wail. Oh my God.
Yeah, he can. Super, super talented.
And he controls the volume like crazy. He's got such tone. He plays the guitar and the amp and that space echo like it's one instrument, you know, it's not a system.
Right.
It's like one thing that is organically alive, and he's just controlling it like a cowboy on a horse. Sorry, that's a Texas reference you Seattle guys might not understand. And I saw his Christmas show, which was, you know, the perfect thing to see at Christmas was a Brian Setzer Christmas show. It was just one of the best nights ever. And their sound, you know, I don't know who was running sound, but man, they did such a great job. You could hear his fingers on the strings, even with the big band. It was
Right.
It was very inspiring.
I saw him at the Hollywood Bowl. It was incredible. A friend of mine's got a house that overlooks the Hollywood Bowl, so you just get free Hollywood Bowl concerts. And I was lucky enough to see that, and it was just incredible.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Well,
some nice.
I feel like rockabilly in general is kind of overlooked a little bit.
Well, I went through a huge rockabilly phase.
Yeah, me too.
In my youth, so it's like that was my thing. In fact, you know, the Stray Cats weren't even, you know, that big when I first started listening to them. You know, they were kind of a hip, cool thing to like. You know, then they got huge.
Right.
What is it about rockabilly that you like? Was it the culture? Was it the music?
So
was it the rhythm?
The culture is. I mean, you know, look, you guys are. You're a car guy too, right? You're building cars or something, right?
Cars, motorcycles, yeah.
I mean, so I love that stuff, but you know, it really was about the music. I started realizing it's so funny. I went from, you know, a little kid growing up loving everything on the radio, just everything on the radio, to getting kind of persnickety about like, maybe niche-y kind of prog rocky kind of things, where it's like, oh well, you know, we like these guys because they're, you know, more talented than these guys, and they're not mainstream, and I still like them, but that's kind of your head when you're a kid, and it swung all the way back to like, you know what? No, I'm into strip it down, super pure, you know, the roots of any style of music, the roots, and I just got really driven by that at just the right time, and it's perfect because it kind of like straightened me out, you know, like, look, just don't worry about the you know, the fluffy hair and the things flying off of the jackets and stuff like that. It's about the music, and it's so easy to get that kind of music. It's very emotional, you know, I think, and plus, like, when you're young, rockabilly, come on, man, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just an excuse for me to use tremolo.
Right?
I have zero use for tremolo in anything that I play, and I try and incorporate it all the time, and I never can without it being hokey or kind of kitschy in a way that makes it sound like, okay, and now we're going into the surf rock rockabilly section of this song. Like, no, I don't want to do that. But yeah, that it comes down to me for a lot of, I feel like, my musical tastes over the years, because I play, have to do with, wow, that would be really cool to do. Not just listening to it as a listener, but as a musician, I can't really turn that part of my brain off that goes, yeah, that would be really fun to figure out how to make that sound and experiment with that kind of tone.
Boy, and there's nothing more evocative than a Gretsch with a Bigsby.
I mean,
you know,
really not easy either. I mean, these guys are real players. That's like, I mean, you know, that's serious business. all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Especially the way Setzer does it with all the jazz influences that he throws in there. It's like, that's what actually, that's kind of how I got into jazz at all, is because I was listening to Setzer go, what is he playing? And how come I like that sound? It doesn't sound like all the normal primary colors I'm used to listening to and that rockabilly often has. He kind of throws in all this other stuff and you're like, I don't know. It was like a spice that stayed on your tongue. And after you turn off the song, it stuck with you. And I don't know, that's one of the things I like best about him.
Going back to the tremolo thing, you know what I find, I just use it because I don't use any kind of chorusing or phasing or anything like that live, but I use tremolo, I think, in that slot. And so I just barely have it on a lot of times, just barely, and not too fast. And it just puts a little wiggle in it, you know, and it does something to the room, you know, that I like. At high volume, of course.
Yeah,
which sure, and like I feel like that's a lot of times the way in which most of us use effects are just a little bit on, just to give it a bigness or something. Because like I typically hate chorus for whatever reason. I don't know. It offends me, like at my core.
But don't you love the Police? Aren't you a big
then I'll
Police
listen
fan?
to the Police and go, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool!" And
yeah,
or the Cult, which is just like an oversaturated chorus.
Oh my
and I'm
God.
like, man, this is the greatest thing. And then I try and use it with my own stuff, and again, I'm like, man, this is so hokey. I can't use this. But you know, dialing off of things. You know, our last recordings that we did, I was finally able to add some tremolo. But again, it was so light that you can't even really tell that it's there.
Fist listeners are never going to hear it, man.
Yeah, but if you take it away, you're going to go, it kind of sounds empty. It doesn't sound as big. And you're right, like that. Most of the time, people that are using effects, phaser, flange, any kind of modulation, it's the bare minimum to just give it like these different artifacts or a bigness or something like that.
Like Van Halen did with the Eventide harmonizer back in the 90s, right? Where he just had it on all the time on everything and you eventually forgot about it and it just made it sound thicker and wider and you weren't really sure why necessarily all the time, but it was a pair of those harmonizers.
You know, I mean, it's funny how I think as a guitar player, you end up finding what is your effect. You know, it's like, it's just like even like a whammy bar. It's like you see Jeff Beck or somebody using it all the time. It's like, well, I'm going to start doing it. And then if you do it, it sounds stupid, you know? So it's like, you find you know, that it just wasn't meant for you, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So then what's yours, Joey? What's your thing that's uniquely yours, in your opinion?
Uniquely mine? I don't know if I have very much uniquely mine, except for the fact that you know, when we started and there was no bass player. Now when we tour, we bring a bass player at minimum, and now we've been bringing a keyboard player, and it's awesome in a lot of ways.
But it changes your residual sound, though.
It changes the way I play, but it also in a good way. It changes the way I play. It gives me a little breathing room. I don't have to like panic, you know, if I stop or quiet down a little bit, you know. And I think for the listener in the room, you know, it was tough not having bass for a while. I mean, I think people liked it at first, but then it was like, you know, I kind of got tired of hearing about it myself. You know, it's like, yeah, it's true. Let's get a bass player. I miss it.
Well, and you used to be a bass player in Dada, right?
Yeah. Well, I still am. I mean, I play bass like in the studio, and in Dada I was a bass player, and I was a loud bass player. I mean, Dada is a loud band. I mean, technically Dada is still there, although we don't do much anymore. But that is not a quiet band. Although we could play it like back when there was Tower Records. We would do like in-store things at Tower Records all around, or Hard Rock Cafes. We had a great hookup with Hard Rock Cafe. The person that was in charge of booking all the Hard Rock Cafes was friends with our manager back then. And she would say, look, here's your deal. You play all the Hard Rocks that I need you to play during the year. And on New Year's, I'll throw you a bone and you're playing in Hawaii. We got 2 Hawaii New Year's gigs. and that was my first time going to Hawaii too. So that was great. But so yeah, Dada, we could get quiet, but really we were a loud band, so I was a loud bass player.
Would you have two SVT rigs?
Two at the height of my volume, I had two SVT the SVT two heads. You know, they didn't make them for very long. I really like those heads actually.
Oh yeah.
I like the classics. Those are cool. I mean, nowadays, if you know, just a classic SVT with 8x10, and that's enough. You know?
Oh, just an 8x10. Yeah,
Just an 8. I had two 8x10s for a while. It was it's so creamy. I mean, it's perfect. It really is perfect.
That's called needing a roadie really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's called every gig's going to have stairs. Oh no, not again.
That was back when we had a big crew, the biggest bus. I mean, when Dada started, we were in, just like anybody, we were in, actually, when Dada first started, we were in a car, then we went to a station or a minivan, then we went to two minivans, then we went to a box truck and a car. You have to have a bus to keep up. Because those guys are like, they have a deal where they had one crew that was setting up the day before. They had the crew for the day of show, and then they had the teardown crew. So, I mean, they were just like booking it. And I think Sting was flying everywhere. He wasn't even on the bus. And I swear to God, they had like 12 buses. I mean, it was incredible how many people. Of course, I did see the bottom of their, you see their bays where we would put all our gear. It's all like golf stuff. I mean, so these guys are.
Must be nice.
Yeah. You got to get to that point where you got a big crew and you got stuff. You don't bring two SVTs if you're in a band. Definitely don't do that to yourself or anybody else, please.
No.
That must have been you must have just felt the air hitting you like an impact wrench.
Back, and we were playing like sheds though and stuff back then too. So it's like, it had a place to go. Or even like 1,000, like the what is that? Any 1,000-seat club. I'm trying to think of like a famous one somewhere, but I'm not. But anyways, you get the point. 1,000-seat club, it sits perfect in that room. It really does. But one SVT and one 8x10, you're fine.
What kind of bass did you play?
Well, when Dada first started, I had it was the first year American-made Fender Jazz reissues. It was like those late 80s ones where I think they got tired of the Japanese ones that were coming out kicking ass, so they decided that was the beginning of custom shoppery, So I had that as a great bass. A buddy of mine bought it, and he's got a studio in Northern California. It's a great studio. So whenever I'm in that studio, I get to use it. So that was it was jazz bass. I love jazz basses. But then when we first started getting some checks, I started getting a couple of, different precision here, different, I had a Les Paul recording bass for a while that was pretty fat. But then around 1998, a buddy of mine who had a guitar shop in LA said, you got to come down here and play this Jerry Jones bass. It's really trippy. It doesn't weigh anything, and it just sounds it's just got a really warm sound. And I played it, I just fell in love. So it's a Jerry Jones, one cutaway, like a Les Paul shape, one cutaway, lipstick pickups. That thing, it's butter. It's first off, it's easy to play. It's kind of too easy to play, really. Like a jazz bass, I like digging into a jazz bass or precision bass. It feels solid. This thing, it's like you could throw it around. It's like nothing. But I mean, you can, once you get used to that, you can do some stuff on that. And the greatest thing, it does not weigh you down like halfway through the night. You're not going, wow, this thing's getting heavier. I mean, you can do whatever you want. So I that's the one bass I hung on to. I still have that.
Huh. Jerry Jones.
Not my favorite studio bass. It's a 3/4 scale. So it's not perfect for the studio. I usually just use a jazz in the studio. You know, I'm not really thinking about basses anymore, though. You know, I'm not lusting after bass.
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel that bass tones translate from the studio to live compared to the guitars that we've talked about?
What do you mean? In what regard?
Well, like we know how we've talked about how in the studio a guitar can have a certain sound, and then live you're going to go out and it's going to lose a lot of things. You need a certain, you need more cut, you need a little less bottom end, you need that character that's going to come through. I'm just wondering how you feel how the bass translates from the studio to live, if there's that much of a difference, or if you think a studio tone works pretty well live too.
I kind of think it does, actually. It's pretty. Those are a little bit. That's a little bit more unilateral, I think, on the sounds. Yeah. Guitar is a little trickier, but a bass. I mean, I kind of just want what I want out of a bass, and it does that thing live as it does in the studio. It also depends on who's playing it. So for me, I've kind of fallen more in love with really. I mean, when I was a kid, I was more about like seeing a guy like Chris Squire or John Entwistle do his thing. But as I, grew up a little bit, it was really, just lay it down, man. Lay it down. You're the feel of the song, just lay it down. So it's a little less, I don't know, it's not as tricky to get, really. It's just pick up a good bass, plug it into a good amp, and you're good, for me.
Right. And with guitar, you're looking at much more, not only more variances in tone typically, but you're looking at getting more sustain at certain times and that sort of stuff. Whereas bass, you're there all the time with your sound, and you've already got such a big piece of real estate sonically that you probably don't have to feel like I have to work with others as much. Oh no, I've ruined bass players all over the world now.
And for me, for guitar, it's really about, it's attached to the song. Okay. So it's about songwriting. So I have 2 electric guitars that are tuned open tune, one open G, one open D, that I can play slide on or finger pick. I have 2 National guitars, same thing, open G, open D. And then the Telecasters, or I have a Jazzmaster, actually Jazzmaster's tuned down to standard D for one song only, which is right to my point. That guitar is for that song. I mean, so basses for me aren't really like that. Guitars are really tied into the song. I mean, like I can't play Meth Lab Zoso sticker on a Telecaster. Not going to happen. It's got to be the Gretsch, or if it's an acoustic kind of show or a radio station, I do it on a National. Got to be open tuning. I mean, it just does.
Yeah. Interesting. That's I hadn't really thought about it that way. That's interesting. Well, I'm looking at the time here, and we promised you not too long tonight, and we're already over an hour, so I think we should probably let you go. But will you come back again?
Anytime, man.
Okay. Well, Trey, any final thoughts before we let this man have his evening back?
No, I mean, it was a cool conversation.
It was. You had your chance, man. That was your window.
That was it.
That was it.
I'll let it go.
Oh, Joey, a pleasure as always. And folks, thanks for joining us for Gear and Gigs. Joie Calio from 7 Horse. And for Trey Hawkins, I'm Jet Stone. You guys have a good one.
So glad you could make it for another episode of Gear and Gigs. Hey, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe so you can find out about the new upcoming episodes. And stick around for another episode. We're bound to be just as entertaining. Until next time, take care.